Yes, I'm beginning to realise just how much of a netball tragic I am, as I competed in a semi-final last night and won by 1 goal in extra time, and I'm in a semi-final tomorrow as well, but I'm hoping to do a little better than that. So, this is actually a story about cheese today, and it's complete with a lot of home photography. It's not quite as wonderfully unscripted as some of those that we've heard today, but I'll do my best, okay? So as I was preparing, my mind was wandering around the topic of thriving and not just surviving, and I was coming up with all sorts of ways that I could capture your attention. My life has been really domestic for the past few weeks, so naturally my thoughts have turned to food and cooking. And I started riffing in my head on cheese, as you do. And most specifically, I was thinking about pre-sliced cheese. When I was growing up, and like Donna Rathbone, I too am 46, born in 1967. I know I don't look a day over 39, thank you very much. But here I am now buying my cheese in pre-sliced and cut up into slices for my convenience. Is this not a sign of a society that is thriving and not just surviving? And I'm a Presbyterian by upbringing, and my whole upbringing rankles at this pre-sliced cheese. Then I had to make lasagna. I reached into the fridge for my pre-grated cheese, and fridge brings out the Kiwi accent in me as well, and there was no pre-grated cheese in there. All I had was pre-sliced cheese. Not a block of cheese, no parmesan, no lovely block of tasty cheddar. I had to grate the pre-sliced cheese. Have you ever tried doing that? You can. Okay, so let's move on. I'm a Kiwi, as I said. I'm a geologist, and I have been working in the mining... must be a Kiwi. Have been working in the mining industry since I was 21 years old. I've worked on mine sites, both FIFO and residential. And as Erin said, I'm a mother, a wife, a netballer, and a keen home cook. I actually also happen to be unemployed at the moment, entirely through my own choice, in a really bad downturn. I didn't say I always made smart choices. I was raised from the age of 10, when my parents separated, by a set of very strong women who instilled a certain southern toughness into my nature. And with a lot of help, it has actually taken me the last 10 years to lose some of the toughness and to stop seeing life as an exercise in survival, but rather as an opportunity to grow, love, connect people and flourish. And I really have had a lot of help along the way. Today I'm going to talk to you about some of these ups and downs. I was having a moment of self-panic and thinking, why would these people want to hear this? And I'm not going to expose every disaster I've had in my life, but I hope that there's enough for me to illustrate the points that I want to make. I hope that my story will ring some bells with you, and maybe make a connection to some part of you that needs to be heard, or encourage you to reach out to someone in your community, either to ask for help or to offer help. If nothing else, I can stand up here as an abject lesson in how not to run a career and inspire you to make professional and well thought out decisions. So, look, this is not home photography, this one, but my ancestors arrived in New Zealand from Scotland, Ireland and the Shetland Islands. Some of them came via the goldfields of Ballarat and the harbours of Tasmania. These were really tough, pioneering folk, and they faced some really challenging conditions. The attitudes they adopted to survive got passed down to their children, who passed it down to their children, blah, 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 and until it came through, hello, to this young geologist here. I was so tough. I am tough. I was so tough, the married digger drivers thought I was tough. I was so tough, I didn't need a boyfriend who bought me flowers and wrote me poems. Who needs nice? That's for fools. As Jane said, we're all wrong on that one. Every now and then, though, I would find myself sobbing about something that I should have been able to breeze through. I was overwhelmed by homesickness after my first 8 months in Australia, and that toughness melted into tears in front of the mine manager. Sky didn't fall, didn't lose my job. He responded to my vulnerability, and he organised me on the first flight out of Walloona and then welcomed me back, my Kiwi accent refreshed. I muddled through these early first years of my career. I drove trucks for a year. I worked as a contract mine geologist. I certainly didn't take charge of this career, which now it seems that was actually a good thing to do. For my first job as a sampler, I got dropped on the side of the road in the middle of the night beside a blazing 44-gallon drum and assured someone from the mine was going to come and pick me up. At times I was on top of the world, at times I was an anxious mess. I kept most of that bottled in, and not many people would have known what was really happening behind the smile. I've driven off mine sites with the first driller who'd give me a lift to get the hell away from there. I left Wiluna Gold Mine, as you would, to the tune of Wendy Matthews after an unhealthy relationship had run its course. However, I was under 65 kilos and I looked really good. I've had 2 maternity leaves for 3 children. Yes, I had twins. I've survived breastfeeding, postnatal depression, toilet training, and years of daycare Christmas parties. Must be the worst. Apart from school musicals, they're pretty bad too. When my first child was 5 months old, I was desperate to return to work, but I was employed by a private enterprise without sound maternity leave policies. I was told, I suppose it's okay for you to come back to work. And it's not really fair on men when women take maternity leave and expect to come back into their old job. It took some resilience to work through that one, but I did it. Most recently, I resigned from what has been an excellent career for me after 5.5 years in my current role and cumulative 18 years experience in the company. The company I've just left is multinational, has ambitious plans and seemingly endless opportunities. Rebecca, how stupid are you? This is home photography, by the way. Drove from Wiluna to Meekatharra through a closed road. Didn't see anybody. Didn't see the closed road sign. I'd say I was an expert in my job without, boasting too much. That doesn't mean I did everything perfectly, but I was certainly an expert at what I was doing. Things were changing rapidly and I was struggling to see what was positive in the changes. This doesn't mean the changes won't lead to long-term success for the company or that the changes weren't necessary, but I was required to do more of the same and I wasn't growing. I was on the boredom end of the spectrum. I was dragging myself out of the house every morning, often leaving in tears or leaving someone else in tears because I didn't want to go to work anymore. That was the fear end of the spectrum. When I got to work, of course, I'd put my game face on, but I kept thinking there's more to life than work, there's more to life than work. I even contemplated moving back to New Zealand and raising chickens. Some of us are defined by our work, and I certainly fall into that category. I had wondered whether I was wanting the next big job because it was my ambition, because I'd worked so hard and wanted to be anointed with a tiara in recognition of all their work. That's a Sheryl Sandberg reference. Or because I really wanted to be a senior manager in an 11,000-person French company with all the additional bureaucracy and pressure that brings. I didn't actually get the chance. A promotion opportunity came up and I wasn't even considered for the role. No interview, no chance to lean in, and no chance to launch my pitch. When I was writing this speech, I thought, how do I describe the feeling when you take a massive career risk like I just did and quit without another role immediately on the horizon? Actually, I was pretty fearless and clinical. Emotional and sad about losing my workmates. Disappointed I'd done myself out of a trip to Kalgoorlie for diggers and dealers this year for a big piss-up. Ultimately proud of myself that I was going to be pushing myself again and I was going to be leaving a comfort zone. I was also seriously angry that I hadn't been interviewed for the promotion, given my experience, my knowledge of the business, my network, but there are no tiaras. I simply didn't have upper management sponsorship, something that was spoken recently about at a senior lunch on gender equity that we went to. The best response I got was from my mentee, and I'm trying to find her. I know she's here somewhere. I had to cancel a meeting with her and at short notice, and I didn't have her mobile phone number, so I ran down the stairs and said to her, I'm so sorry, I can't meet with you, I've just quit my job. And she goes, how exciting. I love that girl. So, fearless, you're still saying, sounds a bit stupid to me, Rebecca. Look, I'm not advocating this type of high-risk behaviour is appropriate for every situation, although in Jane's story, she's also done the same sorts of things. I am lucky enough to have a husband who can increase his hours to make up a bit of the shortfall. What I'm asking you all to do, though, is to challenge your thinking and examine each and every excuse you make to yourself for not taking a chance and for not pushing yourself. Excuses can be really seductive. Next time you're at a crunch point, try writing your excuses down and then challenge yourself to the opposite position. My excuses for staying were obviously the diggers and dealers thing. I needed to be employed. Another biggie, my husband was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and he's self-employed, so wouldn't be earning, we'd have no money. And the biggest one of all, I haven't got another job. That was a pretty big one. And it's been a long time, I don't know how to get one. So look, graph, schmaff, I'm not going to get all scientific on you here, as I'm certainly not an expert on resilience from an academic standpoint. But I actually really like this graph, which illustrated exactly what I'm talking about today. Resilience is the ability to bounce back after an adverse event to a similar level of functioning. Thriving is taking a step up over time to an improved state based on the experience. Don't get me wrong, I've succumbed. And there's one thing I'm very clear on, though. I'm not a victim of any of the circumstances of my life. I did do a bit of research for today, listened to a few TED Talks, watched Anthony Robbins, worth a look, marinated in resilience theory, mixed it all up in my head, and I'm going to spew out a few things that I learnt in that experience. The first thought is that we actually need to make a conscious choice to thrive and not become victims of the world we don't control. Now, I didn't hear Jane's speech before I did that, and I didn't hear Donna's, but there's going to be some similar themes. The theme of today is to make your own luck. How can you get much luckier than to be a 46-year-old unemployed geologist during a mining downturn? However, you will hear from people that have lost their jobs through redundancy, you'll hear a lot of anecdotal evidence about how those people say it's the best thing that ever happened to them. And that's the energy that I'm trying to channel. This was from my daughter. It would be very, very arrogant for me to stand up here and say I always have a good attitude. I don't. I've got the merit certificate to prove it after a rant at a 6-year-old. However, I get up every day and I do the best I can do. So it was for Beck for telling me off. From Eloise, I'm sod. Pooh, for good measure. At times, my attitude sucks. What I do know, however, is one of the keys to resilience is knowing what we can control and recognising the circumstances that can't be changed. We pick our reaction to what's going on around us. A wise woman once told me that even if it is all the other person's fault, we can't control that. We can only manage our side, our reaction. When you're young and you're starting out in the mining industry, it can seem to be a fairly critical, judgmental place, and it's probably true of most industries. The first thing I got told was, "You won't last the summer. What do you know, Kiwi? Fish and chips." Bloody geos. What do geos know? There are silos, professional rivalries and politics, compounded by isolation and harsh climate. Just when you've had a bad day at work, you have to go and eat in the mess with your workmates, socialise with them, redig every bloody rock that you dug during the day. However, it is so important for one's sense of self-worth and belonging to create relationships and become part of a community, even if it seems to be quite unlikely. In turn, when you are part of a community, the support you get and that you give is a vital ingredient in happiness and resilience. When I was 21 years old and very green at Wiluna Gold Mine, I ended up being adopted by all the other Kiwis and treated as a bit of a pet. When I went to Kalgoorlie, I lived with my best friend from Wiluna, who happened to be a truck driver from Tokoroa. I helped care for her 10-year-old daughter, and we shared babysitting duties depending on who was on night shift. Did I really envisage that for myself as a 26-year-old coming out of university? No. But did these relationships that I had with these two, the mother and daughter, did they sustain me? You bet. Sabina created this women in mining community specifically for us to share experiences, form relationships, and most importantly, gain some skills we need to make our own lives more fulfilling. I just wish this had been round when I was a FIFO worker, and I also regret not taking golf lessons then. I swear too much. I eat too much. I'm too loud at times, and I let myself down at inopportune moments. I'm actually not alone in knowing those negative traits. What I'd like to suggest, though, is that we all take the time to build up our inventory of positive attributes, which was what the previous speaker was talking about. The very first thing I did the day after I resigned, sitting in the car in Meekatharra, was write down my list of strengths and skills. When I went for my first formal job interview, I forgot the list, and I was pretty pathetic, really. When I went for the second job interview at a different company, I had scribbled the strengths onto a piece of paper and incorporated them into my answers. I also prepared my own questions a little bit better, just each little bit. We're not the same as the guy who's in the same job as us or the guy that's going for the job that we want. That doesn't mean we're less, we're different. It just means we bring different strengths to a role, however technical and male-oriented our choice of profession might be. We can't self-promote if we can't give ourselves credit and we don't have any self-knowledge. Some of the attributes that make us great come about because of the way we are conditioned and wired as women. Once more, this isn't my area of expertise, but organisations are coming to see the strength that comes from diversity of thinking. And by the way, I'm a feminist too. When I was about 11 years old, I had to give a school speech about achievement. To paraphrase my 11-year-old self, achievement is a row of strawberry jam in the cupboard. Achievement is a tidy bedroom, not getting yelled at by mum, personal best in a running race, or getting someone out at French cricket at lunchtime. The standards we set ourselves as women, as mothers, as wives, or when being judged against men are really high, and perfectionism in this group, I bet, is rife. And yes, unfortunately, I do believe that a woman still has to work harder, smarter than her male peer to be accepted. However, it doesn't mean we should beat ourselves up every time we fail to reach these high standards we set ourselves. The reason I know this? Because I beat myself up every time, and it really doesn't help. Resilience and thriving is about finding the way back from the disappointments, the failures, and the missed opportunities and say, you know what, I'm okay. I also advocate for a less perfectionist approach in everything I do, and I welcome any of you into my dirty, filthy house for me to prove that. I'm not advocating aiming low, don't get me wrong, but without a true combination of passion, sponsorship, opportunity, and self-knowledge, we may be barking up the wrong tree in an effort to prove ourselves. Now for me, achievement is getting a vaguely healthy meal on the table, getting through a game of netball without a major injury, holding off my first glass of wine till 5 p.m. I heard there was wine at lunchtime, I missed it. At work, achievement is sustaining healthy relationships with my peers and customers, working efficiently and acting with integrity. Plus, I need to exceed my KPIs. I'm really sorry to have to say this, and it is a repetition, but we can't have it all. We can't. There is no such thing again as work-life balance. However, we can prioritise the things that are really important to us and decide where to put our energies. More cheese, home photography, Beck's kitchen bench. What are the most important things in the world to you? For many of you, it will be your career, and that's wonderful. For others, your family, your animals, your lifestyle. For me, I used to have to think that I had to manage my energy and therefore I couldn't overcommit. But I was actually wrong. I just needed to prioritise better. I think I held back from opportunities at work for fear of conflict or losing energy. After all, I had 3 children, I worked full-time, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I've caught up in my own story. Being generous with one's energy and time has the reverse effect to what you think it will, provided you are keeping your priorities in order. Being part of the Women in Mining mentoring program as a mentor has been one of the best things I've done, as it combines a number of my keen interests. The mining industry, giving heaps of advice, drinking coffee and champagne, and meeting new people. I'm now on the committee of my netball club for the first time this year, something I would have been allergic to in my manage my energy phase. My career is a very high priority for me, and I am happy to announce that I am starting work again in a couple of weeks. I believed the universe would protect me the day I resigned, and that faith, which is not a religious faith, has been rewarded. My family is extremely important to me, and it's been nice having some time off, but I also know a happy working mother with a serious shoe problem is healthy for us as a family. Maybe not the shoes. Come and check these ones out afterwards. According to my husband, I've actually been a much nicer person recently, so we're going to have to make a readjustment again once I start work. I bought some grated cheese. I realised I needed more time to supervise homework and the Presbyterians could take a running leap. There's still no way I'm going to let my husband volunteer me for school canteen duty. That's just about as bad as daycare Christmas parties. So look, there's plenty of content on the internet regarding the theories of resilience, being happy and successful. This is just my little riff on that thing. In closing though, I would like to recommend one particular piece that was recommended to me by a great friend, and that's the TED Talk by Brené Brown. It's not directly related to the topic of resilience, but it spoke to the tough Kiwi in me who didn't want to show the chinks in her armour and who bottled it all up and who limited herself. Sure, the toughness is going to hold me in good stead during the zombie apocalypse, but until that time, I'm going to practice gratitude, kindness, and generosity. According to Brown, vulnerability is the wellspring of innovation, creativity, and change. And I need to recognise that the tears I've shed through my life are not always a sign of weakness. I also have to convince anybody who happens to be my boss. So inspiration can come from anywhere, and there's certainly enough inspiration flying around reality TV. I'm inspired by all these women in this room today. I'm really inspired by Sabina, and I'm inspired by Lucy Stocker. I'm inspired by my neighbour Bill, who entertains my children for hours. Inspiration, like achievement, can be found in the strangest places. Much of this talk was conceived at Yokine Reserve whilst chasing around a very small fat dog. My number one priority in the world is to encourage my daughters to speak up and to be themselves. I'm motivated to provide an example of a strong yet vulnerable woman for my son so that he has successful future relationships. And I'm inspired to help those that follow me and my peers to get that little bit further in this man's world in a healthy and sustainable manner. Thank you very much.